What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Weekend Review for February 5th, 2023. CIG is back to delivering us game updates, and there is a lot going on. EVA and the new interaction system were the first features confirmed for 323, and then they shared almost everything. All that and more on today's Week in Review. And as always, if this is your first week in review, this is where I take all of the official Star Citizen news each week, put it into one video, and share some of my opinions about it. I also live stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/SaltEMike, every day, starting at 6:30 Eastern Time. And thanks for stopping over from here and just being super kind. You guys are awesome. We have a ton to get through this week, but let's start out with the small stuff, a little update on what to expect in the live servers this month. So this is going to be a really short segment this week as we had no public-facing patches, but we did get a weird This Month in Star Citizen post that shares a few things we can expect to see on the live servers in the next few weeks, I guess. Siege is ending and it's probably over by the time you see this video, as it ends today. I had a better experience with it this patch, but it's still very rough around the edges. Koromor is coming, which is like Valentine's Day in the universe. I guess you could expect to see some ship skins. This image implies that those seasonal kind of Gun Rush Arena Commander themes might happen. The Red Festival is also another holiday we're going to be celebrating, which is Chinese New Year in the game. This has the envelopes that you can turn in, and last year they gave some wooden figurines for what animal year it was, and as well as red ship skins. And then lastly, we have a free fly, which is coming this month, and naturally that comes with a referral reward as well. That's it. That's all we had in terms of patches. Obviously, there was a little Evo patch that happened, but I can't really talk much about that. So let's move on to where the juice is, and that is in video updates. So ISC is finally back, and to many people's surprise, instead of just showing the progress of some CitizenCon features, they showed CitizenCon features set to be in 323, which is unlikely to be live in the next couple of months, showing their hand much earlier than normal. They started with EVA improvements and jumped into what I think is the most significant and impactful change of the whole system.
So there's multiple aspects of the new VA system that makes it a lot more versatile. The first is that when you start looking around, it's your camera and your head that's moving. Your body, most of the time, doesn't. So if I'm heading in a certain direction and I want to see what's behind me, I can just look behind me, but I see my body. I get that instant frame of reference as to where I am, where my body is, and it just grounds the experience.
So with the new system, we put the player into a more prone pose, kind of a superhero pose. Makes them a much smaller silhouette when traversing around.
I think the Superman pose and what was said at the very end there was really key. This pose enables us to easily move around much better in the spaces that we have in the game already, which a lot of them are really tight quarters, and the camera movement, even in third person, looks a lot more polished and smooth as we aren't moving the whole character, just our head. I love this. Next is something that isn't new information, but in case you missed it, it's a very significant change to the way EVA will function.
In new EVA, you can just press forward and you fly. If you release the button, you keep flying, while you still can rotate and look around.
Yeah, we've allowed it so you can turn on the spot without altering your silhouette, which is quite nice for interior traversal again. Feels a lot more natural, a lot more responsive to the player.
The fact that we will carry our momentum and move like our ships in decoupled mode rather than have that sort of auto stop that coupled mode on our ships works like, it's a really big change. If the clip they showed speeding around has anything to show for this feature, it's really, really solid, right? The next two items are not coming in 323. Not coming in 323. The first is EVA fuel, and it will be limited eventually. So being decoupled and not holding down the W key will be a big factor on how all this works. Zero-G traversal, which we first saw at CitizenCon 2022, is the second feature, and I find it a little odd. Just the way it looks is a little weird, and why they do it this way, but they stated it's a good setup for zero-G push and pull. So this seems to be a bit more of a transitional animation, and it's just to make things look nice when we're close to collision. I don't know. I thought we were going to use mag boots maybe. Let me know what you guys think on this one. Then they talked to us about the new interaction system, first shown to us at CitizenCon in October. So I'll just let them give you a refresher on this one.
So the new system, the players don't have to go into interaction mode to interact with the objects.
We've updated that to have an on-screen icon. It gives you the input that you need to press, and it gives you an idea of what you're actually going to do when you press it. So that ambiguity of, am I in range? Is it the item I'm going to interact with? It's gone. You've got an immediate bit of feedback that tells you what you're going to interact with, when you need to press to interact with it, and what you'll do when you interact with it.
I think it looks great. It's simple, and it's so much better than the current system that we have. It's incredibly clunky and difficult to use. Now I have a nice, small, much less immersion breaking system that seems really quick and easy to use. The new interaction wheel is next on the menu, and I will give you a hint. It's holographic.
We've also introduced the personal interaction wheel, which instead of the list view will now give us a nice radio menu that lets you select exactly what you want to do in a much more intuitive manner.
And with the wheel, it's much more seamless, and it feels more like there's no barrier between you and the interactions.
And that's locked to the screen, so you can't miss. You're always selecting something, and it's 99% of the time what you want to interact with. Don't sneeze while you're pressing the button. It's much more intuitive. It's much easier to use. And that option, that problem I mentioned, where if you're trying to interact with what's in your hand, that's gone. Now the new system just opens the wheel, and you select what you want to do with what's in your hand. It just works.
So this new interaction wheel plays really nicely with default item actions, which has been in development for a while, but it needed the whole system to come together as one before we released it.
If, for example, you're out mining gems after blowing up rocks with your multi-tool, you might want to pick a gem up and look at it. Or you might want to just store it directly in your backpack. You now have the option to customize and say, when I look down at that piece of gem, show me the prompt. It's always going to show store, or it's always going to show carry or inspect. It's up to you. And you can change that on the fly, and it'll remember it. And it just allows you to customize your own experience.
Many items in Star Citizen have more than one thing that you could do with it, and the wheel allows players to choose exactly what they want, as you saw in the first few clips there. The quick menu only shows the player one of those actions. The very old clunky one showed them all, so I think this is an improvement. The wheel also allows the player to customize their interaction experience.
The new system is entirely data-driven, so from our perspective, it makes it really easy to customize from a designer's point of view. And again, because we've set up that data, you can then customize it yourself.
It allows you to customize the primary and the secondary interaction. So you can change what just tapping F while looking at something does.
If the player changes the default item on that item, the selection will be saved across all the items that match that state and the item category.
It picks up on what you want to do with different item types. So if you want to cuddle a plushie, you can set that to be your default inspect. If you want to be picking up golden lemons and storing them directly whilst you're harvesting, you can set store to be your default, and then that's the way it'll stay. If you want to equip ammo as soon as you come across it to your suit, you can set that as your default item action. So it's something that, with a little bit of interaction from yourself, means that you can customize and tweak your own play experience and really rough out the edges in terms of your minute-to-minute gameplay and how you interact with things.
Now, I know that was a longer clip, but I really wanted to make sure you understood the importance of why we might need a radial menu. This doesn't really have to mean consoles or anything. It's just showing how powerful it can be. If it wasn't clear in the example at the weapon rack, it really shows how changing the default action can really help improve your experience. Also, did you see how fast you picked up ammo and things? This took many seconds in the past, sometimes double-digit seconds. And just a note, as they said you can customize the secondary action, that is triggered by double tapping F. Now, similar to Inside Star Citizen, but much more than I think most people expected, Jared and guests shared what seemed like most of the planned 323 features before we even have a roadmap coming out. It is a wild ride, so strap in, and as always, I will be taking out only the major talking points from an hour-long show, so link is in the description. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a must watch. And we start out with something that was a big surprise for me.
Distribution centers are now fully on track to come in Alpha 323.
Yep.
What can you tell me about what players can expect?
Okay, so just as a bit of background, the distribution centers are these massive facilities. They truly are really big, that are down on the surface of planets and moons and things like that. And they kind of are what they sound like, right? It's a center of distribution. Like, there are lots of landing pads. It should be a big hub of activity, basically. And what we're trying to provide for 323 is some variety between the different locations, so slightly different layouts between the different distribution centers, so they all feel a little bit different from each other. Have different factions at each of these places as well, which should give a very different feeling of what you're going to be doing there. So just as an example, and we talked about this recently, is you might have a law-abiding faction there, and typically you would be doing what you would expect to at a law-abiding place, where you would be trading, talking to people, things like that, all above board. If you're a pirate, you can obviously come and attack and cause trouble, but they might have security systems made to deal with you. You might also have a hostile faction that's take over one of these things that a corporation maybe previously had, and they came in and took over, and that would be a very combat focused area for you to go and play in. And then you might have something that's more of a mix. So you go in, the front is very professional and business-like, but underneath, if you go a little bit deeper, you might find that they're up to no good.
Space wallet.
Yeah, so ultimately for the content we want to provide, the distribution centers have a lot of possibility, and there's no way that we're going to provide all of the content that we want to in one drop. But we definitely want you interacting there, doing cargo missions, and potentially some basic like combat missions and things like that to interact with all of the different areas of the distribution centers we're going to provide.
I really didn't expect to see these this early, but if we did, I expected them very much to be the way they were explained here. Sounds a lot to me like they are simply going to place some down with Rastar, tie a few basic missions to them for 323, and let us explore around a bit, and that's it. And guess what? That's okay. Hopefully they will iterate on them much more. And Jared hinted at just that they would be. So I assume the iterations would be like the raid that we saw at CitizenCon, as this was not mentioned here at all. So 12 months or so, things at CitizenCon. I think we could probably expect that to be what Jared was talking about. And the next part, I was dead wrong in my predictions from late last year.
So we've been talking about master modes again. Master modes we've been talking about master modes for just as long as we've been talking about distribution centers. They first debuted 2 CitizenCons ago. In 323, they are slated to go in.
Yep.
They're slated to go in, so yay for everybody. The vehicle experience team, Rich Haller's team, April and all of them, they're fast working on converting all of Star Citizen's existing spaceships to the master modes, defining the different archetypes, and again, we'll be talking about those in detail in ISC in 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Now, when Jared told us master modes would be in the first half of this year, I was thinking no chance, right? And this is one of the parts of the show that still has me really skeptical about what they can get done. But like he said, they are going to show it. And with all the ships being in, we've never tested non-combat ships in master modes yet. So this has to be coming in super hot. Feels like they're ripping the Band-Aid off. So this one might be a bumpy ride. I love the choice, though, that they made in the next topic.
So let's start with reloading. So the changes or improvements to reloading, as we've been calling it, have, again, come through the necessity of change through playing combat in Squadron a lot, very focused combat areas where we're able to really hammer out some of the basic combat mechanics, where we were in situations that were getting frustrating, and we were essentially playing the game. As most people probably know, engaging the FPS combat, if you reload, we save your ammo pool to your magazine, and that goes back on your suit. And you might then end up in a situation where if you want to put more magazines on your suit is now completely full, and you can't put more on unless you swap them out, and it's a very sticky, tedious process. Yeah, so essentially we're trying to remove steps there, rather than get rid of the realism that you have with basically having magazines that contain the ammunition. We want to keep that, and down the line we may still want to lean into doing the magazine stripping through a proper animated system. What we really wanted to lean in to at the moment is just an ability to be able to condense the amount of ammunition down that you've got. So that's what we call ammo repooling, and that is an interaction either on the weapon or in your inventory that lets you essentially go, this weapon, I would like to condense all of the magazines for that. Your character will play an animation while it's happening. It's quite a basic one. And then it will take a varying amount of time depending on how much ammunition you're shifting.
So for me, this sounds like a perfect middle ground for a more hardcore game like Escape from Tarkov, and basically ignoring magazine amounts altogether. We're somewhere in between that. At CitizenCon last year, they showed the ammo repooling happening automatically and instantly in the looting UI section, and they mentioned a simple animation here is the middle ground, and I think that I could be really happy with that, so I like this. Now, for me personally, the least surprising planned feature is what they touched on next.
Freight elevators, obviously.
Yeah, we've got the freight elevators. We've got the basically the instance hangars. So you're going to be able to go to your own hangar. You're going to have your freight elevator. You're going to be able to spawn your ship. The core part of the experience is that you essentially go to your freight elevator. Will have a kiosk with a nice new UI on it. You can then interact with that to essentially go, what's in my storage? So the regular inventory area storage is going away. So it's much more physically based in your hangar storage. It's much more personal. You then go, I want all of this stuff. Click, 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 click. You fill up or see the freight elevator filling up on the UI, you then click a button and lo and behold, all your stuff's just come out the ground. And then it's up to you to load it into your ship. So as part of that, we'll also have things like hover trolleys. We've obviously got the tractor beam that's usable in there too. So you can then wheel it over, start loading up your ship, and it's a much more representative feel of what the cargo experience is going to be like long term.
They have been talking about and working on these for quite some time, so we will finally have them and see what it's like. No mention for cargo timers here, really, so some of the finer details like how they plan to deal with subscriber gears and things like that, which is supposed to come with these, was omitted as well, but I'm sure we'll have an Inside Star Citizen on them sometime soon. Next, everyone was excited for me as I have spoken about the economy for years on this channel, and we had a very preliminary discussion with them, but I have to say, I am much more at ease with the way they spoke about the game. And they start out with explaining what the economy means to this team.
First of all, of course, it includes the prices, but at least for myself, it's a bit more than that. It includes telling a story, but instead of using nice pictures, instead of using words, we are telling a story with numbers. We want to make sure that everybody is immersed in the world. They are having fun. They progress. Everything that they are doing not only makes a difference for the world and for the other players, also makes a difference for themselves.
Would you agree with that, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, I mean, especially with an MMO, it's all about an immersive dynamic. It's the feel that everything around you is connected and that your actions have purpose and you can progress and so can your friends.
They said all the words that are important to me. Progress is the key here. Everything that we are doing has to make a difference for the world and the players around us, not just ourselves. I feel safe with these guys. Next, Jared asks a really important question.
So in 3.23, the first, let's say the next kind of major push towards building this economy, towards hardening this economy that's been, if you don't mind my saying, kind of all over the place for years and years and years. It's going to happen. What are we talking about as far as what's going to happen in 3.23?
Well, cohesive is a word that we are using a lot, bringing all these systems that our wonderful colleagues already built, bringing them together so they make sense when they work together. You've already seen some glimpses in Pyro, in the design of Pyro, in the design of the prices of the new the new prices of armors that need to work very hard on them. We're working on the weapons, on FPS weapons, pre-balance, vehicles, ships. Eventually, we're going to do a pass on everything, basically.
When he said cohesive, I almost melted. This game has been so disconnected for so long, and one of the only things that can bring things together is the economy. Now, one of the biggest changes, and we accidentally saw them in a PTU recently, were changes to the in-game ship prices, and they explained how they decided to get to the prices that they chose.
So for that reason, we take those factors that we know they are already decided on. For example, I mentioned already manufacturers. Some manufacturers put more care into their work. They use better materials. They use better technology. They use alien technology that is harder to get. That informs the price. Obviously, if a ship is larger, it's going to cost more.
Gotcha. And if it's Drake, it's obviously going to be cheaper.
I would not confirm or deny that.
Yeah. So manufacturer is one tenet. What else is a factor?
The size of the ship and its focus. So the same way a tank is more expensive than a lorry, the same way I would expect a combat ship to have better technology, better armor, better stats on average than a truck.
Okay. So it sounds like, if I'm understanding you correctly, in 3.23 there's going to be a massive change to the in-game costs. And I want to make sure that we're talking. This is a development thing. It's not a marketing thing before the friggin' Reddit threads start up. This is going through and working the in-game economy and realigning the ships based on manufacturer. Roll size.
The choices they made here make sense, but I have to point out the frustration Jared shared. I felt this to be 1,000% genuine. He knows we're going to connect this to ship sales on the website, but they have to make the in-game account. They have to make the game, guys, right? They raised the prices quite a bit on some ships. The C8R will go up to 500K. The Arrow will go up to 2 million, and it was at 900K since it's a combat ship. And the Connie goes all the way to 10 million. And the Hammerhead is around 45 to 50. And lastly, the 890 jump falls around 70. The big thing they mentioned here is they want players to work together to buy a ship. But in order for that to happen, we need org and party systems that we aren't even close to or haven't had mentioned at all to make that make sense, right? So if you're sort of annoyed by these prices for now, trust me, I get you. But I also think they have to start thinking about the live game at some point, right? Instead of just ship sales and things like that. So now, there are a few things of note I don't think that made sense to clip out, but they're really big features planned for 3.23. The first being the mini-map. You saw it in the ISC. It's planned for 3.23, but it might not work in all ships and locations. Every patch, they plan to add a little bit more things to the map and ships as well. And the new star map is actually planned as well. It's crazy. We're finally getting this thing. I don't even know what to say. It's amazing. The character customizer shown at CitizenCon is also in the cards for 3.23. A new version of Ninetales Lockdown called Blockade Runner is coming back. We had an ISC on it at the end of last year, but it's planned for 3.23. A new version of Xenothreat, which sounds like a complete change to it, is coming, and the new looting UI is planned as well. And then for other updates, the sneak peek is a huge peek into their plans for cargo at the outposts many players have frequented for hauling for years. So they aren't just thinking about personal hangars, guys, right? Like, this is a big deal. Notice the size of the ship. It's a Cutlass. And the size of the cargo distribution elevator. They're both much smaller than what we have in our personal hangars. This seems to be coming with a trend of ships like the Hull C that seem to thrive a lot better with hauling to maybe those LEO stations up above the cities. Maybe these outposts will provide smaller, more local missions, but what I think this really means is it creates an artificial limit on efficiently loading up a really large ship like a C2 at a location like this. as the elevator might not be able to load the largest containers or enough to make it worth the wait. Right? So that's kind of what I think that they're implying here. This is a way better commodity cargo system. If it's real, I'm purely speculating here that this is how it'll all work, obviously, right? The timers that we've suffered for years could potentially go away here. Lastly, the complete and open nature of these has me very concerned about security. How are we supposed to protect our investments here? And if indeed these are ideal for small haulers, the expectation of having 10 people protecting a location for a profit size that's meant for 1 to 2 people, like, I don't think that that's really reasonable to have that many people protecting you. Let me know what you guys think on this one. It's a pretty big deal for them showing this, but it's also making me think a lot of things, right? Then the Galactapedia. Most of the content here is about the Banu and their systems, but the main article is about the AI ban and the reasons behind it, and what may change in the future with the Imperator, as this is an AI-friendly one. One of the side features is also pretty cool, or articles is pretty cool. It's about a flotilla in the Gimbals system. I can't say it, but it's the Center for Human and Banu Culture Exchange. So there's a flotilla there, and if we get this system, there might be some cool stuff to engage with. And then there were some dev comments on Spectrum. Gimbals are changing in master modes, which this should be completely obvious if you're playing the game at all, because these are in the master modes test that we have right now in live. So if you no longer lose a weapon size when using a gimbal. So you don't go from 5 to 4. What you lose is fire rate. So the only expectations are that ships that cannot have gimbals, like the Vanguard nose guns and the size 7 gun on the Ares, are going to not have gimbals and maybe not have any of those negatives, right? The Carrack and freight elevators are the next topic, and they simply state that ships made before the cargo changes are hard to deal with, and they will eventually fix some of the larger issues like the Carrack, but the current goal is to work on more widespread, impactful things and deal with the edge cases later. So the current focus is on freight elevators. It's okay that the Carrack isn't working right now, but it's not okay to leave it for the amount of years that they have, right? So people's frustration justified, but let's get the feature in and then work with it later. Hull C kind of gets the same treatment on Spectrum here. They will not have manual loading for it or any other ships that need to be docked at a station. And that's pretty simple. They need to fix the current issues with it before we move on to the next step, right? And that'll do it for this week. So a lot to unpack. CIG said a lot of things. So let's first see if they can show those things and deliver on them, right? It has been many years of words, guys, many years of words and a lot of disappointment. So I tend to stay a bit more cautious on my excitement for what they're trying to create. But I will say this, I am really excited and really happy for what's being prioritized. If it makes it in, great. But the fact that some really needed polish and some really important updates are on the top of their list is enough for me in early February. I will have a completely different tone at the end of April for what comes in and what doesn't and what they're prioritizing. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the update. Comment on anything we talked about, anything we might have missed this week, and subscribe for more weeks in review. And I'll see you guys next week.